So let me give it a little context. So how much does a new phone system cost? How much does a VoIP phone system cost? Let me give it a little context. Back in the day, it was expensive. So you could almost say in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, it was $1,000 a phone. 50 employees, 50,000. 20 employees, 20,000. Stuff was expensive because it was really proprietary, complicated stuff. The new model, it's all monthly as a service. So what's changed is take a 50-person company that wants to roll out this type of technology. It's a per user per month model. So you could say it's anywhere between $20 a user up to like $40 to $50 a user, depending on technology. And so for that company, 50-person would spend about $1,000 to $1,200 a month, all in, with no upfront fees. So the technology is very affordable, where back in the day, it used to be a big, big barrier to entry. And now it's kind of affordable to any business, big or small.
And to sort of dovetail off that, so if you sign up for that $20 to $40 a month, what are you eliminating besides just your...
Good question. So any business that's in business today pays for phone service. Like you have to pay someone for the dial tone, whether it's Verizon or Cablevision, you're paying someone, and you're usually paying a company to maintain the phone equipment. So there's usually an existing expense of X per month for the phone bills and X per year for the maintenance plan on the phone system. And those fees go away. So about, I'm ballparking this, 80% of the time, the company will spend the same as they're spending or less to get the new stuff. So the economics are actually super attractive to most businesses.
So Ben, it seems like VoIP has been around forever, but there's still probably a percentage of the marketplace that doesn't use. So if you had to put a percentage on it, what percentage of companies out there aren't using UCaaS or VoIP services?
That's a great question.
You know, essentially, where do you see sort of the way of the future going?
Good question. So I'll answer that in two parts. So what percentage of the market is using cloud-based technology? On the small side, 250 users or less. So think of that like small company, 10 phones to 250. It's about 50% of the market is using it. So about 50% of the market's not using it. So that means there's still a ton of market opportunity for growth out there for companies like me. And on the larger side, I think of enterprise. They're only about 20 to 30% adoption. So on the enterprise, there's still a ton of opportunities for cloud because it's more complex when you have thousands of seats to roll this out. But the short answer is I'd say about 50% of the market doesn't have this, if I had to give a simple answer.
What's the turnaround time? I mean, obviously existing companies, 10, 20, 30, 40 employees, they have existing phone systems. You guys come in, what's the turnaround time for you guys to come in and replace it?
So when a customer agrees to move forward, by the time it's done, it's usually about 6 to 8 weeks. But as far as the installation day, it's usually a full day of a technician or two on site because you have to, depending on the size of the company. So if you were to say, all right, I have 40 employees, how much time does it take to install a new phone system? There's a lot of technical stuff I don't want to get into with the wiring and who the IT company is, but generally speaking, you would cut over like the receptionist's phones first and then all the other phones second. So I would say take about 10 to 15 minutes of phone, multiply that times the size of the organization.
So there should be no downtime?
Extremely minimal. Because once the main number ports to a company like mine, so let's say you've had a main number for 20 years, it ports like kind of like a light switch. So at 1 o'clock at Tuesday, the number switches over. Then we could point the number to cell phones or the receptionist phone or voicemail immediately. So on the inbound side, you would never miss a client call. But there is a reality of switching phones and plugging them in. There is a reality of downtime per employee, but not as far as receiving calls.
So you're doing per user per phone, you said. So what's the contract term on that? Is it typically?
It's a great question. Yeah, so most businesses, the most common term is 36 months because that allows companies like me to basically eliminate all the upfront fees. So if companies want month-to-month or a 12-month term, then the upfront fees have to be passed on to the customer because it takes a lot of labor and cost to roll this stuff out. So the most common term is 36 months, I would say, in the industry.
So I mentioned your service to my building manager, because we're in a shared workspace, and she said that they're using Verizon already for internet, and so she thought it made more sense to keep the phone. I guess Verizon also has a similar voice over IP service. What's your counter argument?
That's a good question. So it's a great question. So ABC company has Verizon. Why not just stick with Verizon? The answer is two parts. Companies like mine and all the other providers were over-the-top providers. So you could have our technology and our services still keeping Verizon Fios. So our stuff works over the existing internet provider. And so do all the other. That's just how it works. The internet's like the highway. As far as the second part, it's kind of a funny answer, especially with Verizon. So most people don't know this. Verizon does $120 billion a year in revenue, and they're massive. So when you take a small company that puts more complexity on a Verizon package, then they have to call Verizon. And most of the time it's on the painful side. And I'm not knocking Verizon. Verizon's a massive, they're an 800-pound gorilla. But as far as like making it quick, easy, painless for the end user to call, it's Verizon. They're Verizon. They're just too big to be fast.
Is there a cost savings or is it more expensive? I guess for
Depends.
us,
So
we already have this bundle.
it depends on the size. So you got to remember, the bigger the company, the more costs there are and complexities. So a 50-person company is going to have more going on than a 10. So it really, the short answer is it depends based on the size and what's going on in that environment.
Just want to provide a testimonial of this. Again, about a year ago, Vince was nice enough. We had so many issues in our company with the phone system just dropping out for periods of time. And general manager came to me and asked if I had a connection. Vince was nice enough to come in and provide like a consultation, work with us over the months, and then they finally pulled the trigger to switch to your services. And I think it's 3 weeks in now, and it was seamless. Everybody's extremely pleased with the installation. And it's funny, it's probably just setting different rings, but you know what I noticed from on the road when I'm checking voicemail and stuff like that, is that when you call in before, it was multiple rings to get delivery. But what's nice is you dial the phone, as soon as you hit dial, you reach delivery. It's almost like it seems like it's on speed dial. So it's
great.
easy for a client. So
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I know it's been on the road, but I appreciate it.
Thank you. Januzzi?
So my question spins off that. Is your big differentiator your personal service, platform, your functionality?
It's great, good question. So the differentiator to me is not the technology. Any real provider worth their salt can give you the same technology. The endpoints are either Polycom or Yealink. The software is mobile apps and desktop client software. So it's not really the technology. It's the difficulty of getting the technology to your staff. So as you know, anyone could buy something. You could buy Salesforce. You could roll out softwares. And it's expensive and a nightmare because no one knows how to use it. So the hard part of my industry is the change management. It's like, oh, you're a 30-person law firm, and someone's had the same phone on the desk for 18 years. Getting that person to learn and adopt like mobile, cloud, you know what I mean? Like the way the psychology works. That's really our value, I would say, is the changeover management. But the technology is the par with the industry itself, if that makes sense.
Vince, the last time you and I had a house call, I'd asked you in terms of how could I be on the lookout for someone who might need your services. And you said one of the easiest things was a visual clue that if you look at the phone, I think you said if it's a Nokia, that it's old and they may be in need of an upgrade.
It's a good question. So that's a good question. So to me, like, what are the triggers when somebody needs a new phone system? The biggest 2 or 3 or 4, office relocations. I mean, that's why we have so much focus on relocations, because anytime someone moves, it's just easier to go with new stuff, new wiring, new computers, new phones, because then you don't have to deal with moving old stuff. So office relocations, number 1. Number 2 is contracts. So every business has a contract. And you know, even for your companies or people you're friends with, be like, find out when your contract's ending and then back into it. So if your Verizon contract's ending a year from now, you would want to start planning 6 months to start thinking about this stuff. So I would say relocations, contracts, and hiring. So if a company's hiring or acquiring, it's a good opportunity to look into this, because why pay money for an old PBX? You know what I mean? Because if you have to add 10 people on an old phone system, that could be like $5 grand. So instead of doing that, you just put the money towards a better solution.
With the new sort of requirements for the emergency calls and stuff, do you guys integrate that into your systems as far as the 911 dial requirements and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. So we actually help a lot of medical companies with after-hours calls. So like, as far as 911, I mean, someone still has to call 911 directly. But like, part of the technology.
Service has to be uninterrupted.
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of times we help companies with, I think of service companies or medical companies where there's after-hours callings. Like, our system is sophisticated enough, it could notify the doctor and the on-call person, so the system can notify multiple people after hours, or route the call to an answering service, or route the call to 911 if, you know, it was a true emergency. But yeah.
For companies that can't afford to have downtime during business hours, do you do this after hours and on weekends?
It's a good question. Depends. So here's the challenge with doing a whole project on the weekends. Everyone's closed. So the porting departments, the technical people. So if there's anything that goes wrong, it's difficult to fix an issue. So most of the time we advise clients let's do this on a day that's slower and like maybe at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. Because it's really, because you need like 3 or 4 or 5 people like to install a phone system, and most are on the back end. Doing it on Saturday is a little riskier because people don't want to work. So I would say usually it's a weekday, but you work with the client on what day is best and what time. Jerry?
So Vince put in our system also, and he came up and he said, you know, useful was his word. That's like an understatement. Like Vince and his staff, and family, everyone, they're amazing. Like they truly, so if you, like there's no questions. First of all, we were having such a nightmare with 8x8, a nightmare. And then also, to your point, Optimum, we're doing this, we're doing that. Vince came in, sat down, calmed me down, and was like, we're gonna take care of it. And rest assured, that's exactly what he does. And if we have a question or whatever, his people are on the phone within seconds, and we're a small account to him, but he made us feel like we were his largest account. So rest assured,
No, thank you.
we'll take very good care of it.
That's
Great,
sweet.
we'll do the voicemail.
And great voicemail.
Well, thank you guys.
That's great. Good job.
I appreciate it.